type of Islam that most people want to hear, yeah, it's recorded. When I talk to them, is they want to know the fruits of Islam, because most people that I talk to judge everything by the fruit it portrays. So when I talk about the veil, usually people think that the veil is just covering up for lust and stuff like that. But I talk about the veil as like a source of freedom, you know, because you know, it's the dynamics of man and woman. It's not just the man looking at woman; it's also the woman understanding what the man wants from her. I mean, the women are always conscious about what men want to see in them.
Islam covers you up.
Well, think about it. There's an article that is describing why do girls throw the way they do. Well, you know what I'm talking about, the stereotypical what some girls do when they throw a ball. You know that stereotype that people have that girls can't throw a ball?
Oh, yeah.
Weak. It's nothing about physical at all. It's nothing like that. It's actually deep psychology. It's because women pay attention to much more than men about how other people view them. So when they throw that ball, they're making sure they can reveal less about themselves in throwing that ball. Because when you throw a ball, you curve your whole body back. Just like when you throw a punch, you put all that force from your foot all the way to your fist. And when it connects, just like a ball, you put all the force from your foot, back foot to the front foot, all the way to your hand, and then you arch your back and throw the ball forward. But women do that. They see themselves as exposed, and they feel themselves as exposed. Therefore, they limit themselves of how they interact with people. But when they don't feel other people looking at them and feel exposed, then they'll really reveal who they are.
They might throw the ball as hard as they might knock the wall down with the ball.
Yeah,
if nobody's around.
Just like society too.
Or if somebody's around, they think they gotta stay feminine.
Yeah.
So they go, oh, I can't even throw that thing. You're so strong and muscular, you can do it.
But in fact, it's the same. But if the woman wears a veil, then she doesn't need to worry about how men look at her. But at the same time, it's both ways too. If a guy looks at a girl, then the girl's more worried about how that guy's looking at her. She likes that attention.
So what's the man's problem?
The man has to look down.
I mean, I know about as far as looking at the woman, but how does he stay away from peer pressure?
Well,
he can't cover up in a veil like the woman do. Well, he can.
Well, women don't look. I mean, women don't look at men at the same way. We're not physically like, you know. But at the same time, the only thing
the men are doing things. If the woman is covered up, then the men won't be so show off.
It's actually both ways, because even though the veil is like that, there's another thing too, is that men, when they give an attention to a female, that's the only. Well, it's kind of like a deep psychology. There's something called like the submissive and like the dominant, and like it's, you know what I'm talking about, like when people look at each other. That's why when guys, unless they're friends, if they make direct eye contact, it's a hostile thing. Mm-hmm. But with men and women, it's different. When a guy looks at a girl and there's direct eye contact, there's a form of submissiveness from the female. And what happens is that the more attention the guy directs towards the girl, the more she actually dominates over him. She thinks that he's a part of me now. He is dependent upon my body now, and that he's actually mine in a sense. And without marriage, then obviously something's going to happen. So even if you have a veil, if you're both looking at each other all the time, then there's still a connection.
So this veil...
It's both ways.
And it's both ways, but it also... The opposite of the veil, which is what's going on today, is what you could say a real cause of a huge dynamic of problems.
And the thing is, it's one small thing that branches off to many things. Because what happens is that there's something called insensitivity too. When somebody is so open about how they present themselves in society, and that person's exposed to what's it called, fornication so much, the amount of sensitivity they need, the amount of outside influences they need to stimulate themselves gets higher and higher and higher. That's why you see people now that are completely perverted. Because day after day they have to do something else to get their high, so-called high, right? So one day they maybe just it's regular system, and then say 10 years later he becomes a pedophile or something just to get his mind on like that high that he needs. But Islam says there's a balance. You get married, you have a balance, and that the whole purpose of this is to be a continuation of your life. I mean that it's just for the set time and purpose. You're not supposed to abuse it to the point where it actually destroys you. Just like drugs, when you start one drug, you take like crack cocaine and take heroin, it gets to the point where you take more and more and more and more and more until you destroy yourself. And the thing is, if you look at Islam tells you how to avoid these problems before you get there. So that's my version of what Islam is. And Ahmadiyya teaches you how to remain on the proper path of Islam. It gives you some sort of unity to look back towards and say that that's my Islam, that's my leadership, that's where I'm getting my education from, and that education is rooted firmly in
the real path,
and that's rooted firmly in the will of God.
The middle path.
There you go.
What verse talks about that? Talks about how you're supposed to stay.
Fatiha. Then.
Talks about. No, there's a verse that talks about staying in that.
The middle path.
Don't be extreme, but don't be too
moderate.
Don't be too large. I'm sure. But I've seen.
It's like these two. It's like do everything in moderacy.
That's Islam. Islam is balance. There's that book, Absolute Kinship and Justice.
Yeah.
That's actually talking about nature. It's a nature book. And it talks about everything that is perfect in this universe is balanced.
Natural balance.
It's not something that's been, pushed to the left or pushed to the right.
Laws of nature. Very good. Very good point.
And the things most people, when I talk to them about that, that's when they connect with Islam. And you slowly bring in Islam later on. But people I talk to, you talk about Islam, they're gone real quick.
Yeah, because
They think Islam is some sort of crazy.
oh, because I remember when I was coming up. Well, not coming up, but when I was into a lot of things, it wasn't Islam. I didn't know about Islam, but the church. Church people coming at us, and our whole thing was, even what you're saying is true about God, which we believe in God to a degree. We believe in God, and we believe that from what they were saying, there could be some consequences to the lifestyle that we live in. Drinking, hanging out, partying, and all that stuff.
But they didn't offer you a set way to live your life.
No, it wasn't that. It was that we felt that we weren't going to go into that environment because we weren't going into an environment of a church because we knew that we wanted to be in this environment. And we would be like hypocrites trying to be over there, trying to go into the church. And then we know as soon as we leave the church, we're going right back into this environment. So we stayed away from religion. It was like, we had to stay away from it. It was almost like kryptonite to us. Like if you can't do both. You can't.
And there's a dynamic nowadays because we have a lot of people who've moved to America recently, and they live here and they think that the only way your children can be pure is if we separate them from the American environment. They don't understand that Islam is not a religion where you separate yourself. We're not monks. We're not Christians in that sense. We don't hide in the monasteries away from the evils of the world. We immerse ourselves in whatever environment we're in, and we live a modest and balanced life.
Right.
Just like dating. I mean, instead of kids getting married young would be better than kids, being. I mean, what happens in college nowadays?
Yeah, but that's a scary reality. I mean, what you just talked about earlier about why you say something to them and they just run away. I mean, it's, to a person in that state, that's a scary. I mean, it may seem normal to you, but it was scary to us because now I gotta try to be a part of a community that's doing right, and I know soon I'm not strong enough to stand on that.
Well, that's the thing. Islam helps you stand strong in that type of community. There was an example. The founder of Islam lived in that community, the worst ever Bedouin tribes that drink 5 times a day, and they stood strong by his teachings. And the most people who followed that religion earnestly stayed strong too.
That's what you got to show us.
That's what you got to show.
Show me how. Explain to me how you're going to do that. Explain to me how you're going to give me something strong enough to give me the strength to combat the world that I'm caught up in, the vices that I'm caught up in.